Notre Dame looked every bit like a playoff team on Saturday in their win over Navy. They dominated in all three phases. They didn't commit a single penalty. They didn't turn the ball over once, and they looked every bit like a team peaking at the right time in November. Sunday Night Live starts right now.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody, and welcome in to Sunday Night Live on Locked On Irish, your daily home for Notre Dame football. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is now the #1 sports podcast network in America, all thanks to viewers and listeners like yourself. I'm Tyler Wojciak, and I'm the host of this show. I went to Notre Dame. I'm a producer at Fox Sports, and I've been covering the Irish since 2020. Thank you for joining me live on Sunday night, November 9th, to react to Notre Dame's blowout win over Navy, or if you're tuning in on Monday morning, thanks for making this your first watch or listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today and be sure to subscribe to Locked On Irish on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, because nights like this are why we do the show. That was a complete team win on Saturday, and it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about. So tonight, we're going to break down how Notre Dame dominated all three phases and played one of their cleanest games of the season. I'm going to hand out some game balls and highlight the biggest plays that swung this thing wide open in segment 2. And then we're going to talk about what this win means moving forward for Notre Dame's playoff path. We're also going to talk about some other crazy games in college football that happened over the weekend. And I'm going to take your questions live in the chat. The live chat is already getting going here. Carlos Garza says he just got back from South Bend today. Trip was awesome, and it looks like he enjoyed some pizza over at Rocco's. Ray says, go Irish. In No Flow Gaming said the Eli Raridan anytime touchdown is banned. And I agree. I've given it out 3 weeks on the show. It's just not working. Eli Raridan was not able to find his way in the end zone on Saturday. But let's get into it, all right? Because this was Notre Dame's I would say the cleanest and certainly the most complete performance since the Irish pummeled Arkansas back in September. They got a head coach fired in that game. The entire crowd was out of the stands by halftime. But I think this win is a little bit more impressive because Arkansas was already on the ropes. Navy was 7-1 coming into this game. They were without their starting quarterback, Blake Horvath, which we're going to talk about here in a second. But still, Navy had a lot to play for in this game, and Notre Dame was under a microscope, which is something we talked about in the preview. Now that they are ranked number 10 in the college football playoff rankings, like they're right back there in the mix, and they're getting a lot more people are paying attention to them, and they probably weren't all that much during that 6-game winning streak that is now a 7-game winning streak. So with all these extra eyeballs on Notre Dame, and with this game being in prime time, they had to deliver a strong performance, and that is exactly what they did. And I think you could talk about every single aspect of this game, and it was all a net positive. So this is a really great win for Marcus Freeman, certainly one of his most efficient wins as a head coach. But the things that stand out: they didn't commit a single penalty after a game against Boston College where they committed way too many penalties, and some of them were egregious. They were bad calls by the officials, like the face mask on Josh Burnham that was so bad that the ref actually apologized to Burnham and I think the entire Notre Dame roster and the coaching staff after that game, because it was just so bad and came in such a critical spot. They also didn't turn the ball over, and they made every single one of their extra points. And this all happened in a game where I expected the conditions could play a big factor. And for those of you who were at the game in person, I salute you. If you stood there in that crowd for the entire 3-hour game, you're better than me. Like, I've sat in some cold games. I've sat in some wet games. I don't know if I have ever sat through a game where it was pouring rain at one point and then turned into a blizzard in the fourth quarter. And that's what Notre Dame was dealing with on Saturday. But you know what? They did not let it affect their play. And the person who I was probably most concerned about when it comes to the conditions was C.J. Carr, because he didn't look that great against USC when he played in pretty rough conditions. But he looked really sharp all game long. It was a damn near flawless performance for number 13, and we saw it early when Notre Dame had the ball on offense after they stopped Navy on defense to start the game. They were backed up in their own territory, got stuffed on first and second down, so then they had a third and long. Navy was showing pressure. C.J. Carr recognized it. He checked to a nice little dump-off throw to Jeremiah Love, who was wide open for a 27-yard gain. And then right after that, he followed it up with a beautiful deep ball to Malachi Fields, hit him right there in the hand. So that was a great play. They moved the ball right down the field. They ended up scoring on that opening possession. He finished 13 of 16 passing, 218 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and 0 picks. And honestly, he should have been 14 of 16 passing because one of those 3 incompletions was a perfectly thrown pass to Malachi Fields on the left sideline, just hit him right in the hands. It was actually the only, I would say, weather-induced drop that we saw from Notre Dame all game long. Carr averaged 13.6 yards per attempt in just horrible conditions. He had a bunch of receivers, too. He was throwing the ball all over the yard. Malachi Fields was involved. KK Smith had a touchdown. Will Pauling had 2 catches, including one really impressive 27-yard gain where he caught the pass and then had 19 yards after the catch. Jordan Faison does what he does. 4 catches for only 27 yards, but he did get in the end zone, had a big conversion on 4th down as well. I already mentioned the big play to Jeremiah Love, but the one person who didn't get any action this game was Eli Raridan, and that is really disappointing because I thought this could be a big performance for him. I was talking about it all week on the show. I gave out the 3-leg parlay, but as we have discussed, No Flow Gaming has already called me out. We're bearing the Eli Raridan anytime touchdown score. Like the fact that Ty Washington, the backup tight end who hasn't had a great season to say the least, was able to find the end zone before Eli Raridan is just devastating for us Eli Raridan backers. But Notre Dame had the ball for 9 real possessions on offense in this game. 1 was a kneel down at the end of the first half. They scored touchdowns on 7 of those 9 possessions, and they actually could have scored a touchdown on the last offensive possession too, but they ended up kneeling it to close out the game. So this was just a very impressive performance for the Notre Dame offense, and they needed it, right? Because this is a team who has weapons all over, but they haven't been able to get over that 40-point threshold. But tonight, they could have gotten in the 50s, maybe even the 60s if they really wanted to. But it wasn't just the offense. The defense stepped up in a big way. Navy also had 9 possessions in this game. They scored 1 touchdown and had 1 field goal. Other than that, the Notre Dame defense forced 7 punts, and they turned them over on downs twice. I was actually pretty surprised that Navy did not have a single turnover in this game. Maybe it's because Blake Horvath wasn't playing, their starting quarterback, who has been known to turn the ball over, leads the nation in fumbles. But I think when Braxton Woodson was announced to be the starter in this game, I thought this could be a test of the Doc Rivers theory. And if you're not familiar with the Doc Rivers theory, he obviously famous NBA coach who said he would actually much rather have his opponents, all their starters play, because if they don't and some guys are out, then it's human nature for his own team to relax a little bit and not take them as seriously. And then the guys who are backups and are getting an increased opportunity, they're going to play extra hard. And sometimes, even when teams are without their top players, they can end up surprising the opposition and getting a win. Well, that was actually not the case in this game. But early on, Notre Dame struggled with Braxton Woodson. He had 101 rushing yards in this game, had a really nice 41-yard scramble in this game. So I think that Navy had to modify their attack with Woodson at quarterback compared to Horvath. Like, if Horvath were out there, they would have finished with way more than 22 passing yards. But they also resorted more to like their traditional triple option flex bone look that we've seen in the past, but Navy has kind of moved away from because they could throw the ball downfield. And I think the Notre Dame defense was just trying to get their feet under them early on. But I think overall, Chris Ash's first game against Navy as a defensive coordinator for Notre Dame was terrific. I mentioned in the preview that he actually coached against Navy back in 2014 when he was the defensive coordinator at Ohio State. That team ended up winning the national championship, but they actually did not beat Navy that thoroughly. It was like 34-17, so I was a little bit concerned. How is this going to look? Well, he relied on his assistants, who I'm sure helped out a ton in the week leading up, and they moved to a slightly different attack. They had a 4-3 base defense. They moved Devontae Smith, who's been the starting nickel when he's healthy. He replaced Christian Gray as the field, so they didn't really need a nickelback in this game, and Devontae Smith is a very physical player. I thought he played really well. Second on the team in tackles, was also solid in coverage when they did try to throw the ball downfield. And then on the defensive line, they were rotating all game long, and they didn't even need Boubacar Traore in this game. Marcus Freeman said after the game that Traore could have played, but it wasn't necessarily his strength going up against an offense like Navy. Plus, he's a guy who had a knee injury last year, so maybe they were just holding him out for rest and just to avoid injury before they have a huge game against Pittsburgh. But honestly, they didn't need him. Like, they rotated all across the board. I mean, you saw Armel Mukum getting serious snaps early on in the game, which we have not seen. Elijah Hughes, Sean Sevillano Jr. was in there at one point. Josh Burnham had another really good game. So 27 total players on defense got snaps in this game, and they all played really well. They held Navy to 228 total yards of offense, and this has been one of the more dynamic Navy offenses we have seen. Notre Dame held them to 4.6 yards per carry, and like I said, just 22 total passing yards, and Navy went 3 of 11 on third down. So when a defense holds Navy to 206 rushing yards, way more often than not, you're going to dominate that game. And that's exactly what Notre Dame did. But we also have to give out a shout out to special teams because they have been heavily criticized as of late, and for good reason. And I think Marcus Freeman surprised a lot of people when he opted to roll with the true freshman, Eric Schmidt, as the starting kicker. And guess what Schmidt did? He made every single extra point, and he kicked every ball into the end zone on kickoffs. So a great first start for him. The lone special teams hiccup was a bad punt by James Randall, but we're going to give him a pass because he has been so good this year, and the conditions were not conducive to punting in this one. He just shanked it on that play. And even the backups played well. Like Kenny Minchie got out there, and he finished 3 of 3. Or 35 passing yards and had a nice 13-yard scramble. And then Aeneas Williams, look at that, man. Look at 22 back out there on the field. He actually finished second on the team with 72 rushing yards, highlighted by a 54-yard touchdown run. I was so happy for him in that moment, and I thought it was really telling how excited the Notre Dame sideline got when Aeneas Williams broke free for that touchdown. The way that they got so pumped for him in that moment, and considering everything that Aeneas has had to deal with this year, basically being benched after being a key contributor as a true freshman on a team that made it to the national championship. Look, I'm sure it has been a really difficult year for him, but I'm so glad that he was able to have that moment, and I hope it turns into more opportunities for him in the future because we're getting to the end of the season. I know they're trying to Heisman campaign for Jeremiah Love, and you want to get him some stats, which he did. I mean, he had 94 rushing yards and then over 120 total yards because of his big catch earlier, but it was just a complete performance across the board. The starting offense, defense, and special teams came through, and when the backups came in, they didn't let their foot off the gas. They continued to play well, and they needed a complete performance after what they put on tape against Boston College. So this was a great win all around, and now that we've laid out why this was one of Notre Dame's most complete wins of the season, let's talk about the players who made it happen. A dominant team performance is great, but I think a few guys stood out, and they deserve some game balls. So that's coming up next right here on Locked On Irish. Today's episode is brought to you by Wayfair. The holiday season is right around the corner, and that means it's time to get your home ready. Whether you need more seating for guests, cozy new linens, or fun serveware for holiday hosting, Wayfair's Black Friday sale is here to help you make your space shine. And the best part, you don't have to wait. Wayfair's Black Friday deals are happening all month long with up to 70% off everything from sofas to spatulas. I recently upgraded my living room using Wayfair, and it completely transformed my apartment. I couldn't believe how fast everything shipped just in time for the holidays. Browsing through their site, it's easy to find pieces that actually fit my style. Nothing generic, just quality designs that feel personal. If you've ever hosted family for the holidays, you know how much difference a few new touches can make, and Wayfair makes that easy. Don't miss out on early Black Friday deals. Head to Wayfair.com now to shop Wayfair's Black Friday sale for up to 70% off. That's WAYFAIR.com. Sale ends December 7th. All right, welcome back to Sunday Night Live here on Locked On Irish. I'm Tyler Wojciak, and I wanted to say thank you again for joining us here live and for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network in America. And we've got to get the chat going here because we are going to be taking some questions from the chat in segment 3, but I can tell that everyone's a little riled up about this one. They're happy. Look at this, the Strong Hearts. I was there. It was a wet and cold one. Strong Hearts, I hope you were there for the entire game. Here we go. Herrick Kroger says game day visits during away games are scary. I believe he is referring to the fact that College Game Day is going to be in Pittsburgh this weekend for Notre Dame's game on the road. We're going to talk about that more later on. We got Ryan Toussaint here, not mad about the missed 3-leg parlay. Eventually, Raritan would score, and it was still a solid prediction, even if it was a miss. You know what? Thank you, Ryan. I needed that because I felt bad giving out this pick, and if anyone out there was losing money because of me, if they were tailing my 3-leg parlay that I gave out in the mailbag, I apologize. Unfortunately, it just hasn't been Eli Raritan's year when it comes to getting in the end zone. But I do want to talk about some performances that really stood out to this game. We're kind of just getting things figured out here on Sunday Night Live. I love doing these. It's fun doing it live. It's fun to interact with everyone in the chat. But we're going to try something new here on the show today. We're going to give out some game balls for the win on Saturday. So on offense, who's it going to be? Well, there's a bunch of different guys I could give it to, right? CJ Carr, had a really good game. Jeremiah Love had the best play of the game, right? And he finished with 13 carries for 94 yards, 2 touchdowns. Malachi Fields was getting the ball early and often. He finished with 4 receptions for 97 yards. There was a point in the first half where I'm like, man, is he going to go for 150? Because it was just a complete mismatch. But then Navy started to shade another defender over there, so it wasn't just a one-on-one situation every single time. And honestly, the offensive line played really well in this game. But if you're going to give the ball to one person, I think it's got to be CJ Carr. As I said earlier, he should have been 14 of 16 passing in a torrential downpour and then the snow. I think the most impressive aspect of his game, though, was the deep ball. He threw 5 deep passes. He completed 2 of them for 86 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. He also threw one to Cam Williams that ended up being a defensive pass interference, and Carr actually got rocked on that play. And also, Cam Williams sighting. We have not seen that in quite some time, maybe ever, right? Like, he's been out there for garbage time, but certainly not when the starting quarterback was out there in the game. But in addition to just converting on the deep balls, he finished 2 of 2 on intermediate throws between 10 and 20 air yards for 32 yards. And I know that doesn't really sound all that impressive, but when you have to layer that ball on those intermediate throws, it's always a little bit difficult, especially when you have to fit it in 2 levels of defenders, and then you add in the conditions and how hard it was to probably grip the ball. I thought it was just a really great performance overall from number 13. He was also perfect in the short passing game, and we have said all season long that one of the best attributes of CJ Carr is that he has a great ability to just learn from his mistakes, and then he's able to grow. Like the mistakes he was making at the beginning of the season, he just learned from those, and then he got better, and then he pretty much cut them out. Now, he's not a perfect player, right? He still has some tendencies, and he still misses on a couple throws every once in a while. But I was concerned about how Carr would play going into this game because of how much he struggled against USC in similar conditions. And I knew that Navy was going to stack the box, and he was going to have to take advantage of one-on-one matchups on the outside when it would be pretty difficult to throw the ball. Well, he made it look easy out there, especially on the deep balls. Like that one early on to Malachi Fields, I was like, man, that is such a great pass. He threw him open, made the nice catch, and then later on, that deep ball touchdown to KK Smith in the end zone was like a perfect pass to him. So the fact that he was able to excel in worse conditions against Navy compared to what he had to deal with against USC, to me is really impressive. And I understand that the Navy defense is not loaded with playmakers, and even though you don't really think about USC's defense when you think about that team, like there's still some good playmakers over there. Those guys made some plays, and CJ Carr was just unfazed. He went out there against Navy and was throwing the ball all over the yard. I also love that he was getting a bunch of different guys involved, and you also have to give credit to the offensive line for just keeping them clean throughout the entire game in this one. Like, Carr dropped back 16 times. He was kept clean on 14 dropbacks overall, and the offensive line did not give up a single sack in this game. And actually, Carr mentioned in the post-game press conference that he wasn't touched throughout the entire first half, and he was trying to think back to a time where he was playing football where he literally was not touched by a single defender for an entire half. Eventually, Navy was able to get their hands on him. They hit him pretty hard on that deep pass to Cam Williams. But that was a really impressive bounce-back game for the offensive line. Again, they're still dealing with a new starting left guard in Sullivan Apsher as he's going to fill in for Billy Schrouth until he returns from injury. And then you've got Joe Otting, who's now just going to be the permanent starter at center the rest of the season. And I thought it was a big bounce-back game for him. I thought Anthony Knapp was exceptional in this game. And then I felt that live in the moment. I just looked it up on PFF. He did have the highest grade of any Notre Dame offensive lineman, but guess who was right there at number 2? Sullivan Apsher, which is big in just his second start with the Notre Dame football program. So the fact that he's taking advantage of his opportunity is really good for this offense because they need him. And I understand that early on in the season, there were a lot of people who were not particularly impressed with Anthony Knapp, but I think now he's more comfortable, he's healthy, and he's been playing really good football as of late. So even though the offensive line played really well, I think you still got to give the game ball to CJ Carr for what he was able to do in those conditions. And just this team needed him to step forward. Navy was stacking a bunch of guys in the box early on, and they were going to have to lean on their quarterback, and he delivered for them once again. Now, flipping it over to the defense, we're going to give Jay Nosberry the game ball because he had a huge game for the Irish. And there's always like one defensive player who just steps up and dominates against Navy. Usually it's a linebacker. Sometimes it's a safety. Back in the day, it could be a cornerback. Robert Blanton always played really well against Navy. Greer Martini, linebacker, always played really well against Navy. Last year, it was Jalen Sneed who had the Navy game, right? He had the best performance in the game, ended up getting a fumble recovery for a touchdown in that one. I thought Jalen Sneed might have another big game, but nope, it was Jaden Osbury who had the best defensive performance against the midshipmen. He led Notre Dame with 8 total tackles. He had 5 run stops. He had a sack and 2 total tackles for loss. He was just everywhere, right? Like there were times where it looked like Navy might have a big play and then Jaden Osbury would be there to trip up a defender. And like it doesn't really pop out on the stat sheet, right? It's just a tackle, and sometimes it's a shoestring tackle, not a big hit or anything like that, but it's a critical play in a big moment. He's just such a smart football player. The entire Notre Dame linebacker core really stepped up in this game, but I thought Osbury just took his game to another level, and I just kind of feel like he's extremely underrated, and I'm guilty of underrating him myself because when we talk about the Notre Dame linebackers, Kingsley Viliamo-Asa has been getting a ton of praise this season, and for good reason. Drake Bowen has been playing really well as of late. Jalen Sneed certainly has his moments, and maybe those guys are just a little bit flashier, right? Like Kingsley Viliamo-Asa had probably the best highlight on defense in this game when he obliterated a lead blocker on Navy and then made a tackle for loss in the same play. I don't even know if he really hit the ball carrier as much as he just kind of went down from the force of KVA just destroying that blocker. That was such an awesome play. And I was actually watching this game at a bar in Hermosa Beach, California, with it was like the official Notre Dame game watch for the Notre Dame Club of LA, Patrick Malloy's. I think there might be a few people who are there who are watching or listening to this right now. First of all, just wanted to say thank you to everyone involved for having me. That was a really fun experience. I've never been able to make it down for that game watch. They do one every Saturday. So if you are in the Southern California area and you want to watch a Notre Dame game with more Notre Dame fans, I could not recommend it enough. Again, they do it every Saturday for every game. Patrick Malloy's in Hermosa Beach. But when KVA had that play where he blew up that blocker and then made the tackle for loss, the whole bar at once was like, ooh. And whenever that happens, it's always a really cool moment, as long as it's Notre Dame making the play. And he's just got an unbelievable ability to get in the backfield, and then he's just so physical and he's so violent, so he can make plays like that. He's a special football player and a future pro. But as I'm talking about KVA, I realize I'm veering away from talking about Jaden Osbury, and that is really what I want to focus on here, because like KVA has those highlight plays. Jalen Sneed is really good at getting after the passer. Drake Bowen has some big hits every game, but Jaden Osbury is just a sound defensive football player, has a very high football IQ, knows where to be. He can do everything. Like, he can stop the run. He can get there in the backfield. He's really good in coverage, probably the best linebacker when it comes to covering guys out there in open field. He can make open field tackles. So I'm glad that Osbury was able to have a game like this where he got a lot of credit that he absolutely deserves, and maybe this will lead to more playing time in the future. Notre Dame has so much talent in that linebacker room. I mean, even Madden Framo, the true freshman, was getting some snaps in this game, but Osbury is just another really good player. It goes back to the point we said at the beginning of the season. Notre Dame has 4 linebackers who are legit starters in KVA, Bowen, Sneed, and Osbury. And I give a ton of credit to Max Bulla in the way that he's been able to rotate these guys and utilize their skill sets, lean on their strengths, mask their weaknesses to some degree, but Osbury is a player who just probably needs some more snaps. So glad he's getting all the love he deserves. He definitely gets the game ball on defense for this one. And then special teams, it's got to be Eric Schmidt, right? He's the player who stood out the most. We didn't have any big-time returns or anything like that in this game, but he was criticized a lot lately. We may have said on this show that we wondered, me and Luke Smith wondered if he was even going to be on scholarship next season after a really rough start to the year, but Marcus Freeman picked him. Eric Schmidt needed to give Marcus a reason to be confident in him going forward, even though he did not kick a field goal. The fact that he went out there, buried all of his extra points, I think is a big deal. And I wanted to give a shout out to a couple other guys who aren't going to get game balls, but Jordan Faison, to me, is just a stud football player. Like, that guy can do everything for Notre Dame. Like, he is so good catching passes. He's good after the catch. When they need to run some trick plays where they need to do a pitch or throw the ball downfield, they go with Faison. Like, last year in the national championship when they ran that reverse pass to Bo Collins. It was Jordan Faison who threw it. Early in this season, when they played Arkansas, they ran the fake punt. They pitched it to Faison. Faison made a pass downfield to Malachi Fields for a big gain. I heard that in the Boston College game, when Notre Dame was struggling to find any answer at kicker, they honestly contemplated having Jordan Faison go out there and kick extra points. Like, this guy can do it all, and even though his stat sheet in this particular game wasn't very impressive, 4 catches for 27 yards, he still was able to find the end zone. He continues to block his ass off downfield. So Jordan Faison is just a special, special football player. But that's really all the main performances. Again, we could have given the ball to Jeremiah Love just for his one play where he should have been down in the backfield. He had 7 different Navy defenders got their hand on him, but he was able to stay up. It was reminiscent of the Michael Dyer touchdown in the national championship game between Oregon and Auburn, where Michael Dyer was like tackled and it looked like he went down near the sideline, ends up breaking a huge gain on that play. Auburn kicks, I believe it was a game-winning field goal in that one, but Jeremiah Love just had a great knack of just staying up, right? Because he could have gone right into the ground, and he knew immediately that he never went down. And I'm very glad that the refs never blew the whistle there. But Jeremiah Love is just a special, special football player. And again, I could have given him the game ball just for that one play. But as I said last year, when Notre Dame's defense went out there and they just dominated teams week in and week out, I came on this show, and I felt like every time I was doing like a Sunday reaction show, I would just say, don't take this for granted. Appreciate Al Gold and appreciate what this Notre Dame defense has been doing, because they dominated so many teams last year that we just came to expect it week in and week out. And maybe some of those performances, just like we didn't give them enough credit in the moment. And I would just caution all of you to not do that with Jeremiah Love, because he is such a special football player. He makes plays like that look routine. Like, that play was going nuts on Twitter, right? Everyone was talking about it, went viral. They're like, this is the run of the year. And I'm not saying that to discredit it, but I probably could think of maybe 5 plays by Jeremiah Love that are better than that play, right? Like, the touchdown against Boston College was really impressive just because it was 94 yards and he was looking at the Notre Dame sideline the whole way and no one on Boston College could catch him. The 98-yard run against Indiana, the 2-yard touchdown run against Penn State, when he hurdled the defender against USC last year and then ran forward, kept going, and then just lowered his shoulder and trucked another dude. Like, that was freakishly impressive, even though it didn't end in a touchdown. So it seems like every single week, this guy does something where you're just blown away by how good he is. And he's one of those players who decades from now we're going to be talking about, right? Like, when I was growing up, I would hear about the Rocket from my dad, and he would talk about how electric he was and how fast he was and how no one could catch him. And every time he got the ball in his hands, you thought he was going to score. And I know my dad is certainly not alone in that. I've heard it from a bunch of other people as well who were there, who were alive during the glory days of the Holtz era. And they talk about the Rocket. They talk about Tony Rice. Well, decades from now, like, I'm going to be telling my kids or my grandkids about Jeremiah Love and just how good he is. And the fact that we only have probably a few more games left with him, right? Because he's going to obviously play the next 3 games in the regular season. And then hopefully the playoffs could be 4, could be 5. Who knows how many more games Jeremiah Love has left in the Notre Dame uniform. But he has one more home game coming up here on Senior Day against Syracuse, because, again, this man is going to the NFL after this year. But I would just encourage you to appreciate these last handful of games we have with Jeremiah Love, because he is a truly special talent. These guys do not come around often, and I am just so grateful that we get to watch Jeremiah Love make plays like this in a Notre Dame uniform every single week, because these players don't come around often. Not just with Notre Dame, just they are generational talents. He's going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft, and it is just so fun to watch him play. So he doesn't get a game ball, but he's going to get a ton of love on this show, as do all the other guys, CJ Carr, Jay Nosberry, Eric Schmidt. Game balls to all of them, and a salute to Jeremiah Love. All right, now let's look ahead and talk about what this win means for Notre Dame in the playoff race, because beating Navy isn't going to change anyone's perception on its own, but it does show that this team is peaking at the right time. That's coming up next, right here on Locked On Irish. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Okay, so last week, my pick on the show, I was giving out Victor Wembanyama to win MVP on FanDuel. He was at plus 380, and it's something I was pushing every single day. Well, now he's plus 1,000, okay? So the tide has turned a little bit. He has cooled off after his absolutely torrid start to the year. So things have changed, but you know what? We're getting even better value. So I'm going to double down. I'm not running away from Victor Wembanyama MVP. I'm going to just put more on it at plus 1,000. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, welcome back to Sunday Night Live on Locked On Irish. Thank you for tuning in and for making Locked On the number one sports podcast in America. I'm Tyler Wojciak. I'm the host, and just want to give a shout out to the chat. We got a couple people, actually all kinds of people chimed in here. Here we go. I like this one. Tyler, please don't stop the Sunday Night Live show. I love this every week. Look, I love it too. Last week we weren't able to do it, but very happy to be back here doing it live on Sunday night. It's always a whole lot of fun, and I think it's fun to interact. And honestly, it keeps me on my game, right? Because when I'm pre-taping, if I make a mistake, I could go back and cut it out. I don't like doing it, but I can. But when we're live, here we go. It's just exactly what you're seeing here. There's no going back. There's no editing it. We also got Colton Fisher here. Land Kamon Spell and let him wear number 4. Kamon Spell, the number 1 running back in the class of 2027. 5-star was committed to Penn State. Then he decommitted after James Franklin got fired, and Notre Dame appears to be in great position there. Kamon Spell also went on his Instagram and posted a highlight where he had this great long touchdown run, and then he did the Jeremiah Love signature celebration where he makes the heart with his hands. So I agree. If Notre Dame gets Kamon Spell, they should let him wear number 4. And that actually brings up a point that's kind of unrelated to what we've been talking about on the show today, but I don't really like the idea of retiring numbers. I always thought it'd be cooler if you don't retire a number, but you make it a big honor for anyone to wear that number, right? Let's think about Notre Dame, maybe recent history. Let's say Brady Quinn, right? They don't retire number 10, but if a Notre Dame quarterback is really good, they get to earn the right to wear number 10. To me, I think that's way cooler than retiring a number so that that player could continue to get recognized. Because if a number gets retired, it's okay, then you never see it again, and you understand why, right? Because only one player can wear that uniform. But I think they should just let players wear the numbers of other great players. But anyway, just a side rant here as we do this Sunday Night Live show. But what I wanted to talk about next here is what this win means for Notre Dame going forward. Now they are number 9 in the AP poll. I'm guessing they're going to be in the same spot in the college football playoff rankings that come out on Tuesday night. And the Navy game is never going to change anyone's mind about Notre Dame, right? If anyone was watching that game and they saw Notre Dame dominate 49-10, everyone on the outside, the reaction is going to be, okay, well, that's what they're supposed to do, right? Notre Dame is way better than Navy. It doesn't matter that Navy was 7-1 coming into this game. It doesn't matter that Navy actually had a realistic path to getting into the college football playoff as the Group of 5 bid. It just doesn't matter. And that's one of my personal gripes with Notre Dame playing Navy on an annual basis, but we are not here to discuss the future of that rivalry. We already got some people riled up in the comments earlier this week on the show, but it's not going to change anyone's mind. But the good thing is, with added attention, Notre Dame was able to go out and deliver a dominant performance when I'm sure they were getting a lot more eyeballs this week because they were ranked 10th, because they were the highest ranked 2-loss team. And a lot of people were a little bit critical about the fact that Notre Dame was the highest ranked 2-loss team. They thought Texas had a good reason, maybe even Oklahoma, or just the fact that Notre Dame was 8 spots ahead of Miami, who beat Notre Dame head to head. Those are all fair questions, fair criticisms, I would say. I thought Notre Dame was appropriately ranked, but I was willing to hear out those arguments, and I think Texas and Oklahoma did have a case. The committee opted to go with Notre Dame at number 10, not just because they're one of the hottest teams in college football, but also because from the metrics that they use to make these rankings, Notre Dame checks really well in a lot of those metrics. So Notre Dame is currently at 10. I believe that they are going to be at 9 because Texas Tech just dominated BYU from start to finish in that game on Saturday. Caught that game. That's a noon game Eastern. I think it started at 11 a.m. local time there, but I was watching that 9 a.m. out here in Pacific time. And I got to say, man, that Texas Tech defense is legit. They were in the backfield all night. BYU had nothing going in that game, and I thought BYU was certainly overrated. Yeah, they were undefeated, but I felt like they were due to lose here, and I was really impressed with what Texas Tech was able to do in that game. So BYU was going to drop a little bit. I believe they dropped to number 12. Yes, they're number 12 in the AP. We're going to see where they are in the college football playoff rankings. I don't think the committee loves them, but still, that's one spot Notre Dame is going to move up. It doesn't really change anything because you knew one of those teams was going to drop behind them anyway. But the one game that was really a tough blow for Notre Dame this weekend was when Oregon was able to beat Iowa on a game-winning field goal there at the very end of the game. I had mentioned on the show, I think a couple times, that I loved Iowa in that matchup. I felt like they were going to win outright. I think I gave out that pick on one of the FanDuel ad reads, talked about it with Tim Murray, talked about how bad the weather was going to be, and it was disgusting. I guess if you were at the Notre Dame Navy game and you thought, well, it can't get any worse than this, I promise you, if you tuned into that game in Iowa City yesterday, it was worse than what Notre Dame was dealing with. It was a just brutal downpour the entire game, and it was much colder. So I felt like it was a perfect spot for Iowa to just basically grab Oregon, bring them into the mud, and then win their style of game. And for the longest time, it looked like that was going to happen. Iowa had this really impressive drive to go down in the field, take the lead late. They go up by 1. They go for 2 to try to go up by 3. They actually caught it, but he was out of bounds, so they had to overturn the call on the field. They go up by 1 point, and then Oregon drives down the field. They kick a game-winning field goal. Atticus Sappington, the kicker for Oregon, arguably the best kicker in the entire country, delivers his 3rd field goal on the game. So Oregon gets the win, and that's a particularly tough blow for Notre Dame because if they had lost, I think Notre Dame would have had a better chance to host a game. It wouldn't have been a guarantee, but I think they would have jumped Oregon in the rankings. But now Oregon is sitting there. They're probably going to be 7th in the college football playoff. So Notre Dame's path to a college football playoff berth is looking pretty strong right now. But the path to hosting just got a little bit more difficult because Oregon did not drop that game. A couple other results that were important for Notre Dame. Louisville suffered their 2nd loss of the season. Classic Jeff Brom spot. Huge favorites. End up getting upset. He does it. I think I mentioned on the show last week, too. That's probably going to happen. It's the Jeff Brom special. The other Jeff Brom special is getting a huge upset on a Friday night, which they did against Miami, but they have 2 losses now. Virginia lost finally. They should have lost at least 2 or 3 more games this season, but they lost in this one, so they're going to drop pretty big. They're 20th in the AP, so I don't think Notre Dame really has to worry about the ACC being like a 3-bid league, which was a concern at what point a few weeks ago. Right now, I think it's just going to be whoever ends up winning the ACC. Probably going to be Georgia Tech. Maybe it ends up being Miami, but as long as the ACC is a 1-bid league, that bodes well for Notre Dame. As long as the Big 12 is a 1-bid league, that bodes well for Notre Dame. So those were some important results from the weekend. If you watch the Indiana-Penn State game, that was an unbelievable game. I cannot believe that Indiana won the way they did. When they got the ball at the end of the game, I was pretty certain that Indiana was going to win that game because of just the way the season has gone for Penn State. But that catch by Cooper was one of the most impressive catches I've ever seen. The way that his right foot just hovered over the ground and did not go out of bounds, which gave him enough time to get the toe tap with the left foot. I've never seen anything like that on a game-winning touchdown. So the season from hell for Penn State just continues to get worse. Even if Indiana had lost that game, they would have been ranked ahead of Notre Dame. But if you're not a Curt Cignetti supporter, I'm sure you were pretty bummed about the way that one ended. So as we look ahead to this upcoming weekend, Notre Dame at Pittsburgh, one of the biggest games of the weekend. College Game Day is going to be there in this one. It is going to be a very tough matchup for Notre Dame, so they got to handle business on that one. Oklahoma at Alabama is going to be a big game. As long as Alabama knocks out Oklahoma, I think they're probably out of it. NC State goes on the road to Miami. Miami could lose in that game. That would be good for Notre Dame because then they'd have 3 losses. They'd be out of it. Iowa is going to play at USC. USC was able to win on Friday. They cheated a little bit. Tell me you're surprised because they had a player go out there with the same number. Backup quarterback went out there with the punter's number. Again, they need to cheat to win, but Notre Dame needs USC to keep winning. So hopefully they cheat a little bit more and beat Iowa this weekend. That would be good for Notre Dame's resume. A couple other games to keep an eye on. Florida at Ole Miss could be interesting. Ole Miss could lose that one, maybe drop behind Notre Dame. Notre Dame could be in better position to host a game in that scenario. And the big one at night, Texas at Georgia. I cannot believe that Game Day's not going for that game, but I guess they've already been at Georgia this year. Maybe that's why they're not headed there. But if Georgia's able to beat Texas and maybe beat them handily, that would be good for Notre Dame because then Texas would be out of the playoff picture. But overall, Notre Dame just needs to keep on winning. So they're in great position. They looked really great. I think they're peaking at the right time. But that's really all I have for you. So now I want to go into the chat here. Let's see what we got here. Any questions as we wrap up today's show? Harry Kroger, love Osbury, but is it possible he leaves? His dad is at the AD at LSU now. I mean, I would never say never, but his dad has been working at LSU for a really long time, and that didn't stop Notre Dame from getting him to commit out of high school. Osbury's brother also goes to Auburn, so I think both of the siblings just wanted to kind of do their own thing. Again, maybe now that the dad is AD, they change their mind, but still, I think that they're going to be just fine. I think that Jaden Osbury has a bright future at Notre Dame. He's going to stick around. Carlos Garza, what is the story about the crappy field in Pittsburgh? So the field was like just causing a bunch of injuries, so much so that the NFL Players Association had to look into it, but I believe that they were able to replace the field, so it shouldn't be an issue on Saturday when Notre Dame travels there to take on the Panthers. But something to keep an eye out for. We got another one from Ray who says, can't get ESPN or ABC. I know. I guess you can download the app, but then you have to have a cable provider. I don't know, man. It is just going to be a long week. The Disney, Google, YouTube TV fiasco, they need to figure that out ASAP. I can't believe that it's taken them this long. I mean, the fact that they've already missed out on 2 college football Saturdays, they've missed out on a Monday Night Football, they're going to miss out on another Monday Night Football on November 10th, more likely than not. Like, they are losing, they being ESPN, they are losing a lot of money. So hopefully someone bends the knee here soon, because getting on these different apps, trying to do all the different QR codes is agonizing. So hopefully they get that figured out here pretty soon. All right, here we go. Last one. Ryan Toussaint, what is going to be the X factor or who in this game against Pitt? What is going to be the X factor or who is going to be the X factor in this game against Pitt for both teams? It's early. I haven't started my Pitt prep, so I don't have an answer for the Panthers just yet, but I would say early on, I think it's going to be on the Notre Dame side, it's going to be Jeremiah Love, because in games like this, with all this attention and all this focus going to be put on him, you need your best players to step up and have big games. So if Jeremiah Love is able to run all over Pitt, then I think Notre Dame is going to have a great chance of winning this game. And then on defense, I actually think it's going to be Boubacar Traore, because Pitt has a new quarterback. He's a true freshman that they really like. He's really turned things around since he got the job, but he's not seen a defense like Notre Dame just yet. And I don't think he's seen a pass rush as good as Notre Dame. So as long as Boubacar Traore is healthy and he's ready to go, if he gets in the backfield and makes it a long night for the Pitt quarterback, that could bode really well for the Irish, because that is going to be a really fun game. I cannot wait for that one. Pat Narduzzi probably can't wait for this one, because there are few people on earth who hate Notre Dame as much as Pat Narduzzi. But it's going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to talk about it a lot more on this week on the show. But that is going to do it for tonight's Sunday Night Live on Locked On Irish. Thank you again for everyone who tuned in and for making Locked On Irish your first watch or listen of the day. If you're tuning in on Monday, and if you haven't already, please subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to like the video below, rate the show 5 stars, and leave a review. It really helps more Notre Dame fans find the show. It helps the channel grow, and I really do appreciate it. I'm going to be back on Tuesday morning with Luke Smith to get his boots on the ground report from a very snowy and chilly night in South Bend. And we're going to go through everything we liked and didn't like from the win. Probably going to be a lot more that we liked and didn't like in this one. And then we're going to turn the page to the big game against Pitt starting on Wednesday. So have a great rest of your day, and I will see you on Tuesday.